But we have time for one more because we still have 12 minutes left. So I'm going to ask Ms. Crow to give her opening statement, and then, Doctor, you'll have to wait till after if you don't mind, and then we'll have questions after, so we're hoping that you can all stay around. But I'll recognize Ms. Crow now.
Thank you, Chairman Pallone, Ranking Member Deal, and members of the Senate or the House Subcommittee for holding this hearing. And I also want to say I'm honored to sit in the presence of Sue Myrick, who is a rock star as far as I'm concerned in the breast cancer advocacy community. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today on the Breast Cancer Environmental Research Act. As a breast cancer survivor and advocate, I am very passionate about getting this bill enacted this year. In 2006, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and needless to say, I was absolutely devastated. Before my diagnosis, I'd been helping raise awareness and funds for breast cancer for years. Concerts, events, whatever I could do, because I knew it was an important issue. So when I was diagnosed, this really hit home. And I have the dubious honor, because I am a singer, of having a large female fan base, and I have become sort of a spokesperson for early detection. But as I look to my right and I see these young women over here, as they embark on their adulthood and they're asking questions about whether the lipstick they're using, the shampoo they're using, whether they're drinking from a water bottle might be a factor in there, being the 1 in 7 with breast cancer. I don't have the answers to that, but I think it's a question that needs to be answered, and now is the time. I know awareness is not enough. We need real strategic action, and so I'm joining with Fran Visco and the National Breast Cancer Coalition, because I believe in what they are doing is good for all of us. About a year ago, Fran asked me to learn about this bill, and I did, and I'm not here lightly. I know what this bill will do, and I'm certain that it is the right approach. Why is this bill important to me? Because I want to know what causes this disease. For me and for 2.3 million others who share this diagnosis with me, and especially for those of us who are at risk or putting themselves at risk without even knowing. Like the vast majority of women diagnosed with breast cancer, I have no known risk value, including no family history. I have no idea why I got breast cancer or what I can say to others on how to prevent it. But what I do know is we need more resources into figuring out what the environment has to do with breast cancer, and we need to do that through the government funding, because there's little financial incentive for anyone else to do this research. I've spent a great deal of time out talking to people about the environment, obviously. I've traveled throughout the country to try to raise awareness about what we are doing to the environment and what we can do to help save it. And I know these issues are even more complex than that, especially when it comes to associations between environment and disease. And I know this bill and the National Breast Cancer Coalition includes a broad definition of environment to include not just exposures but lifestyles and the interaction between genes and the environment inside and outside of our bodies. I can tell you that the public deeply cares about the environment. We are talking about it every day. It's no longer third-page stuff in the newspaper. It's on the front page. Women are talking about it on a daily basis on every talk show about how they can live healthier lives and prevent diseases. We're talking about how to live green in order to prevent disease. This is a question that everyone wants answered. And I will say that I understand the concerns of Congressman Burgess and Congressman Barton about this bill. But this bill establishes an opportunity for setting a precedence where the environment is concerned for other diseases. I would hate to think that the benefits of today's vaccinations would not be possible because the research done on finding the polio vaccination was considered disease-specific. Would it not be possible that any findings in this area where the environment affects disease be beneficiary to other diseases? For instance, in the instance of what Dennis Slayman did at the Revlon Cancer Center at UCLA, where he did research on the HER2 positive and created a treatment that now is a targeted treatment that actually is benefiting brain cancer and other diseases. And I want to say that I don't live in the political world, and while this might be a political, seem like a political discussion, until you are the 1 in 7 women diagnosed with breast cancer, you will never know how not political this is. Now is the time. We've been talking about this for a long time, and thank God for Senator Edward Kennedy, who I love and adore and idolize, took this to the Help Committee and has been pushing this through and have been a strong advocate. And I feel like that we've had so much support on this that now is the opportunity to make this happen, to do the right thing, and to show the American people that we are concerned about what's happening and that we're not going to let the brakes stay on, as was alluded to earlier. We're going to keep driving this thing forward, and I look forward to celebrating this. with the good people here in Capitol Hill and being able to take good news back to small towns in America as I go out and tour. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crow. Now, as I said, we have 6 votes. That's about 45 minutes. We'll come back.
Time has expired. Just a comment from Ms. Crow. I mean, you in your testimony, you said this was the bill, but you'd be, as an advocate, willing to get to where we're all going, I would assume.
Absolutely, and I think one of the strongest arguments for that is seeing this young group of women over here and not having they were here earlier, and they're working tirelessly on behalf of this bill as well, to not be able to dictate at this point why they're coming into the maturity earlier than in the past, and what kind of correlation that has to the uprise in statistic in young women who are being diagnosed with a much more advanced kind of cancer that's more difficult to treat. And as, obviously, as a person who's in the media, I get all kinds of emails about don't use this kind of lipstick, don't use that kind of shampoo. A lot of it's misinformation. A lot of it is information that has not been investigated. These young women are living with that every day, with having the kind of information that I'm getting as well, knowing that is this going to be a factor in my getting an early diagnosis with breast cancer or any other disease. And to me, this bill, instead of having a cannonball shoot at a fly, it creates a much more I think a more directed opportunity to look at breast cancer, and with the hope and the knowingness that perhaps that will correlate to not just breast cancer but cancer across the board and diseases outside of cancer as well.
Thank the gentleman.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, my staff warned me, I'm a big Sheryl Crow fan, that I was not allowed to fawn over the weekend.
Please, fawn away. If it means getting the bill passed, fawn, fawn, fawn.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Capps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, and a lot of people hear that this bill is about research on breast cancer and the environment. They may only be thinking of things like pollution in air or tainted water, things like that. And I know, Ms. Crow, you elaborated a little in your opening statement that the use of the word environment can be very broad-based, and you mentioned lifestyle and stress as environmental issues that may clearly affect a woman's health or a person's health. I'm going to start with Ms. Visco and ask, because I know you have some strong opinions about this as well, or beliefs, and ask you to start this conversation. And I hope Ms. Crow will chime in. But I also, just to lay out my 5-minute time, I do want to ask Dr. Lyerly the same question that I asked Dr. Wynn in the previous panel, just to get some information on the record. So please, Ms. Visco.
Well, I will say quickly that we do, as an organization, and this legislation would define environment very broadly. It is not just about chemical exposure. It is about lifestyle. It's about endogenous environmental influences, what's happening in our body, outside our body. So it really is a broad strategic, but broad look at the issues and the links between the environment and breast cancer. Sheryl, did you want to?
Well, and I would go one step further and say that as anybody who's been diagnosed knows that you sort of become a student of cancer and you learn a lot more than probably what you want to know. And one of the things that's really interesting with regard to the environment is in the correlation in different places such as China that never had cancer before 1950, and what is the correlation now to lifestyle, to environmental exposures that is causing a rise in that statistic. Does that apply to us in America? I think we work together as a complete scientific community, but America is so much at the forefront of research, and we know it and we do it so well. And this, to me, is a great opportunity in the fact that everyone right now is concerned about the environment. And as we watch it move into our personal space and affect our personal lives, we know that there is a correlation. We don't know what it is, and it creates and incites a lot of fear in us when we're talking about what kind of plastics we're drinking out of. I have a 1-year-old who's still drinking out of a baby bottle. I want to know if later on that's going to cause some sort of cancer, some sort of disease that could have been prevented. So I agree with Fran that the environment is difficult to define or too narrow, but this is a great starting place for us to tackle.
Thank you. And I'll ask my question of you, Dr. Lyerly, in a minute. But, Ms. Crow, while you were speaking, a group of young women that you were referencing in an earlier comment came back in. And I know that we are all impressed with the girl power, soon to be women power, that is going to really take leadership in the areas that we're talking about today. And you're going to have plenty of material to work with. Let us put it that way, because as much as we want to pass this legislation, there's certainly more to come, and the advocacy groups can hardly wait. And as I said, as I shook a few hands earlier, some of them are going to be sitting back here one day too. So that's a very good strategy that you're embarking upon. Dr. Lyerly, I asked this question before, but I want to have your take on it as well. We have heard from critics of H.R. 1157 that the legislation is too disease-specific. Isn't it true that research on any cancer can often lead to progress for all cancers? In fact, doesn't research for one condition often lead to a cure for another?